There was a man, collapsed on an empty marble floor. In his hands, a dust-covered Bible. Those same hands once crafted what the townspeople called furniture made with heart. He had a wife who loved him. He had trust. He had peace. But now, in this lavish mansion, there's no one. How did this happen? This is the story of a man who had everything and lost it all. And it only took one choice. What you're about to hear is the story of Ethan's empty chair. The sound of waves greeted every morning in the small coastal town of St. Helen. At the edge of town, perched on a hillside, sat a weathered but tidy woodworking shop. A hand-carved sign above the door read Ethan's Workshop. Every morning at 6 sharp, you'd hear the sound of sawing and planing coming from inside. It was the signal that told folks in town a new day had begun. Ethan was a 35-year-old craftsman. His hands were covered in calluses, but the pieces he created were surprisingly delicate. Bookshelves, chairs, dining tables, baby cribs. His furniture wasn't fancy, but there was something about it you couldn't quite put into words or warmth. The townspeople called what Ethan made furniture with heart. "Ethan, this table's amazing. I think it's even sturdier than the one my grandmother used to have." An elderly couple who'd come to pick up their newly ordered table couldn't stop admiring it. Ethan smiled shyly and ran his hand along the table's edge. "This oak is from a 50-year-old tree that grew beyond the mountains. You can see from the rings how many seasons it weathered. This table's gonna be with your family for generations. I made it imagining your grandkids sitting around it at dinner." The old man pulled out some bills from his pocket. "We should pay you more than we agreed on. You put so much work into this." Ethan politely waved his hand. "No sir. A deal's a deal. I don't do this just for the money. The real joy for me is knowing my work becomes part of someone's life." That was Ethan. He'd learned carpentry from his father as a kid, but what he really inherited was something more important. Honesty, hard work, and respect for people. His father used to say, "Son, wood doesn't lie. When you put your heart into it, the wood remembers, and that feeling gets passed on to whoever uses that piece." Ethan lived by those words. He never cut corners with cheap materials, never rushed through finishing work, and never missed a deadline. Sometimes he'd take a loss just to give customers better quality than they'd asked for. In the afternoon, the workshop door opened. A woman wearing an apron walked in carrying a basket. It was Sarah, Ethan's wife. Her face lit up with a sunshine smile. "Honey, I brought lunch. You're skipping meals again, aren't you?" Ethan brushed the sawdust off his hands and grinned. "I guess it's lunchtime if you're here." Lost track of time. The two sat on a wooden bench in the small garden behind the workshop. Sarah pulled out homemade sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of hot tea from her basket. Simple, but full of love. The Wilsons came by to pick up their table today. They were so happy. Ethan took a bite of his sandwich. "Everything you make is like that. It's not furniture, it's love." Sarah squeezed her husband's hand tight. Those hands were rough, but to Sarah, they were the warmest hands in the world. "Sarah, we don't have much, but we're happy, right?" Ethan asked. "Of course we are. We have each other, and we have God. What greater wealth is there?" Sarah's eyes shone with sincerity. Ethan and Sarah had been married for 7 years. No fancy honeymoon, no big house, but their life together was full of gratitude. The income Ethan brought in wasn't much, but Sarah never complained. Instead, she was thankful for the little things and lived a life of sharing with neighbors. On Sundays, the two headed to the town church. It was a 100-year-old stone chapel, but for Ethan, it was a spiritual refuge. Ethan sang tenor in the choir, and Sarah taught Sunday school. After service, Ethan volunteered to fix things around the church. He'd repair old chairs, fix squeaky doors, and build new pulpits. He never took a dime for any of it. "Brother Ethan, if you keep volunteering like this, won't it be hard on you financially?" the pastor asked with concern. Ethan shook his head. "Pastor, isn't it natural to use the talent God gave me for his house? I've already received more than enough. A healthy body, a loving wife, the trust of these people, and most of all, God's grace." The pastor patted Ethan's shoulder, his eyes welling up. This young man's pure faith and contentment were precious beyond measure. One evening, Ethan was making something in his workshop. Sarah quietly approached and asked, "What are you working on?" "A little crib." There's this young couple who just moved to town. They're about to have a baby, but they seem to be struggling financially. You're not charging them, are you?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. "It's a gift. I want to bless a family that's welcoming new life." Sarah hugged her husband tight. Tears fell, but they were tears of joy. She was so proud that her husband had such a good and beautiful heart. Stars dotted the night sky. Ethan and Sarah sat side by side on the porch of their small house, gazing at the ocean. The sound of waves rolled in like a lullaby. "Honey, if we ever have kids, I want to raise them here in this town. Raising them to be honest, grateful, and to love God," Sarah said. "Absolutely. And Dad'll make them anything out of wood. Toys, little desks, rocking horses." Ethan replied with a smile. They held hands tightly. They had no great fortune, no glamorous future ahead. But their life was filled with true peace and joy. It was a blessing money couldn't buy, a blessing that comes from God. That night, Ethan prayed, "God, thank you for this simple life. You've given me everything I need. Please keep my heart from changing." But Ethan didn't know yet that a powerful temptation was about to shake his world. And that this temptation could strip away everything he had. But in this moment, Ethan's life was complete peace itself. It was a peaceful morning like any other. While Ethan was working in his shop, an unfamiliar car drove up the hill road. A sleek black luxury sedan. The man who stepped out wore a tailored suit, and an expensive watch. His face radiated confidence. "Ethan. Man, it's been forever." The man grinned widely and extended his hand. It was Leo. Ethan's high school classmate. "Leo? Wow, how many years has it been?" Ethan shook his hand in surprise. "About 10 years. Look at you, still carving wood in this little town." Leo looked around the workshop and clicked his tongue. "Ethan, let me be straight with you. Your talent's way too good to be buried in a place like this. I'm running an interior design business in the city now. The demand for high-end furniture is insane. I want to partner with you." Leo pulled out a tablet and showed him dazzling photos. Penthouses, upscale restaurants, luxurious offices. "These are my clients. Money's no object for them. They want quality furniture. You make it. I'll sell it. You could easily make 10 times what you're making now." Ethan's heart began to race. 10 times. With that kind of money, he could buy Sarah a new house and raise children without worry. "But Leo, I like it here. I'm happy being with the people in this town." "Ethan, wake up. Does happiness pay the bills? You need to give Sarah a better life. How long are you gonna struggle like this?" Leo's voice was filled with conviction. That evening, Ethan told Sarah about Leo's proposal. Sarah shook her head. "Honey, we're already happy enough. Will more money really make us happier?" "I'm worried." The next Sunday, Ethan went to see the pastor. "Brother Ethan, pray carefully about this. Money is a useful tool, but when it becomes the goal, it's dangerous. Remember 1 Timothy 6:10. It says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." But a small seed had already been planted in Ethan's heart. Every night, Leo's words echoed in his mind. A better life, 10 times the income. Ethan convinced himself. This isn't greed. It's for my family. A month later, Ethan made his decision. He would partner with Leo. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but Ethan squeezed her hand. "Honey, trust me. We're gonna build a better future." The business grew at an astonishing pace. Orders poured in, and Ethan hired employees. His bank account showed numbers he'd never seen before. Ethan was thrilled. Leo was right. This is what success looks like. But 3 months in, Leo showed up with a serious expression. "Ethan, we've got a problem. Lumber prices have skyrocketed. If we keep going like this, we'll be in the red. There's an alternative. We use plywood with wood veneer. It looks identical. Clients will never know." Ethan froze. That was deception. It was betraying the honesty his father had maintained his whole life. "Leo, we can't do that. That's lying to customers." "It's not lying. It's business," Leo shouted. "Are you still that naive carpenter? This is the real world. Everyone does this. You have to adapt to survive. Or go back to that little town." Ethan agonized. He'd already received large deposits and had to pay his employees. He'd put down a deposit on a new house for Sarah. There was no turning back. Just this once, Ethan said in a trembling voice. Let's do it this way for this project only. Leo smiled with satisfaction. Now that's a smart choice. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Inside his chest, he heard something crumbling. It was the principle he'd maintained his entire life. A small but critical crack had formed. And that crack would soon become an enormous chasm that would swallow everything he had. Ethan stared at himself in the mirror. The peaceful carpenter was no longer there. Instead, a stranger filled with anxiety and rationalization stood before him. The root of all kinds of evil had begun to sprout. The business soared. Ethan's name quickly spread in the industry, and his workshop transformed into a large factory. The number of employees grew, and orders never stopped. Ethan no longer crafted furniture by hand. He spent most of his time reviewing contracts, meeting clients, and calculating profits and expenses in his office. His bank account showed numbers he'd never imagined. Ethan moved into a luxury apartment and bought an expensive car. He gifted Sarah designer bags and jewelry. At first, it all felt like a dream. But the happiness didn't last long. As the business grew, Ethan became bolder in his compromises and lies. Using plywood with veneer became routine, and he didn't hesitate to cut corners or mislead clients about production times and quality. He ignored customer complaints and demanded more from his employees. Profit comes first, Leo's words echoed in Ethan's mind. Even on Sundays, Ethan stopped going to church. Business meetings are more important, he'd say, leaving the choir seat empty. Sarah grew lonelier. She watched her husband change and prayed in tears, God, please protect Ethan's heart. Help us regain what we've lost. Ethan found Sarah's worries and advice bothersome. You don't understand reality. This is all for us, he insisted, spending less time at home and avoiding conversation. Eventually, Sarah couldn't take it anymore and shouted, You're not the man I loved anymore. I thought money would make us happy, but it's only driven us apart. Ethan stormed out of the house, his heart filled with anxiety and restlessness. He couldn't sleep at night, and despite his business success, he felt increasingly empty. The pressure to earn more weighed on him, and he feared mistakes or problems. One night, Ethan sat alone in his office, drinking and staring out the window. The city's dazzling lights only made his loneliness more vivid. He couldn't understand why everything he'd achieved felt so hollow. Money, fame, success, none of it brought peace to his heart. Sarah eventually left. You love money, not me, she said quietly as she packed her things. Ethan felt her absence deeply, tasting true sorrow for the first time. But he refused to admit it. This is just temporary. Once I succeed, everything will come back. But inside, Ethan was falling apart. He stopped praying and drifted away from his faith community. Only people who envied his success remained around him. No one truly cared for him. One day, Ethan stood before the mirror. The peaceful carpenter was gone, replaced by a stranger filled with anxiety, greed, and loneliness. He no longer knew what he'd lost or what he'd been chasing. Surrounded by material wealth, his soul grew emptier by the day. That night, for the first time, Ethan was seized by the fear that he might lose everything. And that fear would soon become reality. His success was leading him into a deeper emptiness. Ethan's success didn't last. The wealth he built on deception and compromised quality quickly collapsed. One day, customer complaints exploded, and the media reported the scandal. Lawsuits followed, and business partners cut ties. Leo shifted all the blame onto Ethan and disappeared. Overnight, Ethan was bankrupt. The luxury apartment, car, designer bags, and fancy office all vanished along with a mountain of debt. Employees left, friends turned away, and Sarah had long since gone. Ethan was left alone in a vast, empty mansion. The spacious living room, the heavy silence, and a cold, empty chair that no one sat in were all that remained. As the nights grew longer, Ethan's heart grew heavier. He wondered why everything he'd achieved had vanished so meaninglessly, and what he'd done wrong. Anxiety, regret, and loneliness crushed him. He turned to alcohol for sleep, but only nightmares came. One day, Ethan found an old, dust-covered Bible on a shelf. Sarah had quietly placed it on his desk before she left. He opened it absent-mindedly, and his eyes fell on a verse. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Ethan collapsed on the spot. He realized it wasn't money itself that ruined him, but the fact that he loved money more than God, more than his wife, more than his own conscience. Anxiety, lies, greed, broken relationships, and deep loneliness, all these were not inflicted by others, but were wounds he had pierced himself with. His cries echoed through the empty mansion for a long time. It was the wail of someone who had lost everything, and the painful confession of a soul finally facing the truth. Beside him was the cold, empty chair he had made, but no one sat in. That night, Ethan prayed sincerely for the first time. God, now I understand. Please restore my heart. Help me regain the faith and love I've lost. And that prayer became a small spark of hope for a new beginning. I'm Ethan, and I once chased bigger success, losing what truly mattered. Faced with life's temptations, what would you choose? A. Even if I waver, I'd protect my loved ones and beliefs. B. I'd make the practical choice for greater success.